Bill de Blasio, the mayor of New York, is trying to protect the city from the spread of COVID-19. Now, early on, he was doing a terrible job because he didn't get how serious this was for a very long time. And he had these very flippant tweets about, oh, everybody go out and enjoy the restaurants in New York and all this stuff. And so he was pretty, as much as he likes to think like he's above the fray, and since he's a lefty, I believe in science, he really ignored the science for a very long time. So he did a pretty bad job. But now he swung the pendulum in the other direction because he kind of realized how terrible he messed up. And so now he's become very aggressive with promoting these ideas that would slow the spread of the virus. So he went on Twitter and he said the following, and this led to a firestorm. "We have lost so many these last 2 months, and I understand the instinct to gather to mourn, but large gatherings will only lead to more deaths and more families in mourning. We will not allow this. I have instructed the NYPD to have one standard for this whole city: zero tolerance. My message to the Jewish community and all communities is this simple. The time for warnings has passed. I have instructed the NYPD to proceed immediately to summons or even arrest those who gather in large groups. This is about stopping the disease and saving lives, period." Something absolutely unacceptable happened in Williamsburg tonight, a large funeral gathering in the middle of this pandemic. When I heard, I went there myself to ensure the crowd was dispersed, and what I saw will not be tolerated so long as we are fighting the coronavirus. Okay, so now you just heard what he said. And do you find that particularly outrageous at all for any reason? I certainly don't. He's saying, hey, we have a pandemic, so let's keep following the rules to slow the spread of the pandemic. Pretty straightforward. Well, guess what? The New York Post and Rudy Giuliani and even the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, they came out and were like, this is anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism. So when you go back and look at, his tweets here, there's one where he says, "My message to the Jewish community and all communities is this simple. The time for warnings has passed. I have instructed the NYPD to proceed immediately to summons or even arrest, blah, 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 blah." But the fact that he said, "My message to the Jewish community," people are using that to say, oh, well, that's obviously anti-Semitic. Okay, guys. The reason why he said, "my message to the Jewish community," and by the way, he followed it up immediately with, "and all communities," but the reason he said that was, it was the Jewish community that was having a funeral for, I believe it was a rabbi who died of COVID-19. So they had a funeral for a guy who died of COVID-19, and there was zero social distancing. None. They were on top of each other. There were colossal crowds. A lot of the people had masks on, but that's not enough. When you're that close to each other, the mask is going to be irrelevant. By the way, it's not just that the virus gets into your body through your nose and your mouth. The virus also gets into your body through your eyes. So, if you're wearing the mask, plus you got some eyeglasses or sunglasses blocking it, that's a slightly different story. Those people are a little bit more protected, but you can't be that close to each other. The virus is going to spread that way. It's going to spread that way. And by the way, more and more evidence keeps coming out about the virus, and it is very, very, very contagious. Perhaps more so than they originally thought. I was sent a study where that kind of concluded it's basically airborne, like legit airborne. And that's terrifying. And what people really need, and we obviously don't have this and don't even have the ability to have this, but people really need like hazmat suits and then decontamination rooms. Like that's what you really need if you want to avoid this at all costs. But people don't have that. So when Mayor de Blasio says that, he's just enforcing the rules that everybody knows are there and that we all agree to, and we agree to it because we're trying to slow the spread of the virus. You can't have people totally disregard those rules, and then when he says, hey man, you're breaking those rules, turn around and go, you're a bigot, anti-Semite. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's just ridiculous. And de Blasio I've been very critical of in a variety of ways, but to call him an anti-Semite for what he said here, honestly, is preposterous. I mean, I guess you could make the argument that, hey, instead of saying my message to the Jewish community and all communities, you could have said my message to the Orthodox Jewish community. I don't know. I don't know what people want. How else do you want him to clarify it so that you don't smear him as an anti-Semite? What do you want him to say? My message to the ultra-Orthodox Jewish community? Like, I get it. It wasn't like, you know, secular liberal Jews who were there at the funeral. That secular liberal Jews, generally speaking, believe in science and are going to listen to what the government's saying when it comes to social distancing and whatnot. I agree on that. But like, okay, so what do you want? You want one more word in there? My message to the ultra-Orthodox Jewish community or the Orthodox Jewish community and all communities? But it strikes me as, it's almost like no matter what he said, they were going to attack him with this because it's just a smear. It's just like, oh my God, how dare you? I'm going to pull it's fake bigotry. Like, I don't even think that the people who are accusing him of anti-Semitism think it's anti-Semitic. I don't. I think they're just playing like the I'm offended and you're a bigot card based on no evidence, but they feel like they could get away with it. They feel like they could get away with saying, oh yeah, you're a bigot. He's literally talking about a specific funeral that happened in the Jewish community or the ultra-Orthodox Jewish community, and we see the pictures, we know it happened, we know they're violating the rules, so what do you want them to do? Pretend like that's not happening? Not bring up who's doing it? It really, in my opinion, these kind of cries of bigotry really devalue instances where there's actual bigotry. The number one group that there's hate crimes committed against them in the U.S., it's Jewish people. It's Jewish people. So that's serious, and that's worthy of discussion. And anti-Semitism is a real problem. But when you call the mayor anti-Semitic because he tells people, hey, you're not social distancing and you need to social distance, you look kind of ridiculous. So it's really really pathetic and really sad that I even have to, come out here and do this segment and say that, no, telling people who aren't social distancing to social distance, that's called reasonable. That's called following the science and following understandable rules and laws. So I'm not a defender of Mayor de Blasio as a general rule outside of this, but, this is a case where he's right.